Yeah, Pragya, we're live. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir. Hello and good evening, everyone. I am Pragya Srivastav, your host for today's evening, and would like to welcome one and all for Compose Camp Session 3 by GDSC UCER. So, before moving further, I would like to give you the quick recap of our last two sessions in which we learned what is Compose Camp and what benefits it bring to you, the quick guide on how you can learn Android through the basic resources provided by Google Developer Club. Then we learned the installation part of Android Studio and also the basics of Kotlin. After that, in the session 2, we built our first Android app with Code Along by our mentors and developed a Google Developer profile. So let's see what today's session beholds. There's a saying by Sundar Pichai that Android was intended to be very customizable and we welcome innovations. 2.5 billion people use Android. Tell us more about its wonder and how you can be a better Android developer. GDSC UCR has collaborated with GDSC JUIT and welcome Priyank Shankar as speaker for today's webinar, who is an active participant in GSoC 2022. Now, I would like to hand over the webinar to Priyank for further session. Over to you, Priyank.
Hey, thank you, Pragya. Thank you for the introduction. So, hey everyone, I will just add on top of what Pragya said. So, I have been learning Android for quite some time, and like that is the motive of this session to give all the persons who have joined this webinar kind of guide through all the cheats of the like all the experiences I have had in my journey so that you can optimize on that. So I'll just start with sharing my screen with like I will show you for like what you can say a formal roadmap sort of thing, and I'll just build on top of that. So just a second. I guess you can see my screens. I guess my screen is visible. Can like Pragya, can you just confirm?
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah, so like this is a very famous roadmap sort of thing. Like I guess when any of you would try to learn Android development, you would almost it's almost guaranteed that you will stumble upon this roadmap. But when you have a look at it, it's kind of very what you can say. I would use a word scary for it. But I'll just simplify it for you. If you have a very basic understanding of programming, you can jump into Android development. I would say there is one big prerequisite which you should have in mind is that to do Android development, you would have to install Android Studio, and Android Studio is a very resource intensive application. So if you do not have a strong laptop, I'm sorry to say, but doing Android development would be quite difficult to you because like right now I have a what you can say very good PC, and sometimes good projects would take about 15 minutes to build on my PC. So if you are not having a good laptop, I would not suggest you to come into Android development right now. You can always come back to it later. So just like if I have a look at this like roadmap sort of thing, you can first see Android packages, languages. I would say you can skip that. You can also skip this Android operating system thing, Android platform architecture. You would need to come back to it. I would say like when you are a SD or when you are an Android developer or like when you're working as an Android developer full time. But in the beginning, I would say you should not follow roadmaps. You should be like, I want to make an Android app. For example, I want to make a calculator. What should I do? It should be always, you can say, like your journey to learn things should be always be based out of intuition, not out of key. I have to learn how to like I have to learn what is activity. That is the way like I would first make a calculator to learn how activity work. I would not suggest that. You should be like, I want to make a calculator. What are all of the things I would need to? So for example, if you are going to make a calculator, you would need to work upon activities, you would need to work upon views. So like this is I guess most of the people who would have joined this session know about Compose. So like right now in any application, activity is a building block of application. Like no, there is no Android app in this world which does not have activity because like there cannot like you cannot make an Android app without having an activity. And to show something to the user, you can make the UI like anything which we showed to the user is called UI, or like in more Android intensive terms, you can call it a view. To like coming back to my point, to show something to the user, you have to have a view. And like right now at this given point in Android development, you can create UIs by using XML files or by using Jetpack Compose. So like there are two ways. If you are new to Android development, I would say ki first go to the XML, because like in my professional experiences, most of the places we will go, like for the, like any communal room, most of the legacy code, I would say more than 95% of the code would be in XML. Also at this given point, Compose does not support all of the things. Like you can do almost anything in Compose, but not everything. So having to learn XML would be a very good thing. So like to develop UI, you have XMLs and Jetpack Compose, you can brush upon them. And like if we had our activity, sorry, if we had our aim in mind to create a calculator, you would need to learn activities. And if you're using XML, you would create some XML files. And well, most probably you would create a single XML file, show some widgets to the user, like whatever traditional calculator looks like. But then to like you made a very good UI. You are showing the numbers to the user. You are showing the buttons to the user. Now you want to handle input, like you want to, but you can say map the click of the user to something useful. Now you would have to learn how does the input function works. How do you manipulate the UI on the screen while the user is doing something? These are the things you would not find in this. Like I would say when someone writes in a roadmap like an activity, he means a lot of things like that. And for example, in your calculator, you want to have different type, like you want to have a calculator which support different types of calculation. Like you want to have a calculator you can which can do basic math stuff. You want to have a separate screen in your calculator app to do all the EMI calculations and sorts of things. So for that, you would want to do something like I want to have a button on which the user, when the user presses that button, like the user would navigate to a new screen. How do you do that? Like if you're new to Android development, you won't know. So you would go to like that. This is the best way to learn things also. Like if you don't know anything, just plainly search on Google how to do it. And when you search on Google that how do you navigate to a new screen, you would find this thing intents. And like you will end up learning intents, like what are intents, what are the different types of intents, what are intents filters. I'll just give you a quick overview, although it's not related right now. Like intents are basically of two types. If you are intenting from activity in your app to another activity in your app itself, so you basically know all the details of the activity which you're gonna navigate to, then it is an explicit intent. And when you want to navigate to, for example, a calculator you made, like just for example purposes, if you want to navigate to an app which was made by Google, for example, Google Drive, so you can do that, but you won't exactly know all of the details. So those kind of intents would be implicit intents. And like I would assume you have done all these things. You have made a calculator, and like what are the apps similar to calculator you have made? Maybe a billing software, like a billing app sort of thing, like a billing system for restaurants or something like that. This could be a basic app. So like you would say, like I would say after building a calculator, you would know a lot of things which many people don't know. But in this official for formal document sort of thing, you still don't know service and content providers. I would say let's just skip for it. And like you skip this thing and you now want to make a social media app sort of thing. You want to jump your skills to a next level. So you figure out what are the things you want to do when you have to make a social media app. So like most probably you would want to do contact syncing sort of thing. And like there's an official word for it too. I do not remember for it. Like whenever you want to do something, you will eventually hit a wall. Like maybe you call it rabbit hole. That maybe you thought that syncing all of the contact details which you have on a mobile to the server would not be a big of a challenge, but when you are trying to implement it, it is taking a lot of time. So like I would say rabbit holes are the things which make you learn too much. So like just for the example, when you are syncing your contact details to the server, that would require different things, like to even what you can say to even connect to the server, you would need to require network calling stuff, which would be yeah, we could use retrofit. Like it's a very good library. And if you guys are like properly in love with Kotlin, you can also use Ktor. And if you want to have, you can say deep. down very, like you can, if you want to have very minute control over everything which is happening, you can also use OpenHTTP. And also, like we Android developers, for most of the server stuff, we also consume Firebase. So like these are all of the things which you can consume. But like anyways, if you are making a sort of thing in which you're syncing your details to a server, let's just assume the server is not Firebase, like any server using Retrofit or Kit, or like that doesn't matter. Most probably contact syncing contact is a very, what you can say, time taking or a long process. And let's just assume it is going to take 5 minutes for you to sync all of the things with a good internet connection. And within that 5 minutes, if the user walks out of your app and kills it, like you are in trouble. How are you gonna manage that? Like this thing was asked to me in an interview too, and like I'll just tell you the answer to it. You would have to have services. So services was somewhere here, but in my personal journey, services came way ahead, because like mostly what I did was to try making apps, and whatever I wanted, like whatever the things which were to be learned while making apps, I learned them on the go. So I would advise all of you to do that too. But like anyways, it's your journey, it's upon to you. So like services are just the official, what you can say, definition of services are like if you want to do something in your app without opening the app or without having activity, you would need services. Because at the end of the day, 95% of the things in your app would be in one way or the other related to your activity. So like I'm not really giving you a very, what you can say, specific pathway, but this is the broad location. I'm just going to take a hop from here and there. And like activities, if you are doing some internships, or if you are, what you can say, managing the performance of your app, you will come to know that activities are not really that efficient. If you are, like in many of the scenarios, you can just use fragments inside of activity. Instead of having three activities, what you can have is an activity, and inside of that activity, different fragments. But like again, with the introduction of Jetpack Compose, things are going to change very fast. Like right now, what would take around 500 600 lines of code with fragment, with Jetpack Compose you can do it in probably 60 70 lines of code. But like most of the world is still on fragments, so you would need to learn fragments. And I guess most of the persons will know what exactly a bottom sheet fragment is. Like it's kind of self-explanatory in itself. Like anything, like I do not really have mockups to show to you right now, but it would be all the things which come from the bottom of your applications. And I am not sure if there is something in it there. I'm searching for. Yeah, these are the UI things. Like this user interface thing came very, what you can say, bottom of the roadmap sort of thing. But if you had made a calculator, you would mostly know constraint layout, linear layout. Motion layout is something way too complex. Like it should be, even I would say, should be out of the roadmap, because in most of the cases you won't be using motion layout. I'll just tell you, motion layout is for all the very complex animations you see. For example, when you're using the YouTube app and you are playing a video and you just touch on it and slide it to the bottom of your screen, that is something which you can achieve with motion layout. Apart from it, I would say motion layout is a very good tool, and of course, like it's tough to use too. So I was talking about the social media app or anything like that. So while making a calculator, you most probably would have learned constraint layout, linear layout, and while making a social media app, you would need to learn recycler view, because not only in social media apps, I would say most of the apps which you consume would have a list sort of thing, like an infinite scrollable list, or even not an infinite, then like even if it's not infinite, you will have a scrollable list. And one of the most optimized way to do scrollable lists in XML is using recycler views. And yeah, there are always two ways to do anything in UI, one using the XML files and one using, what you can say, like I'm sorry, what you when one is using the Jetpack Compose and one is using the XML. So if you are gonna make the list in scrollable, you are so sorry, if you're gonna make a list in Jetpack Compose, that would be very less lines of code. But if you have to do it that in XML, you would need to write a recycler view. And like what I'm seeing in this roadmap is that there are not many things of Jetpack Compose, and like design guidelines are something which, like in your learning journey, with like you most probably would not need it, because I would say like it's kindly of like it's kind of an overkill, because you are just making a calculator for learning purposes and you're making it material you it kind of does not make sense. But come on, if you want to learn, it's on you. So like in this roadmap, we have material, like most of you would have material design pattern, like it is kind of official designing guidelines by the Google. Neomorphism is not something promoted by Google, and like something very similar to neomorphism, if we have Neopop, it was a library sort, like it like Cred also released a library, Neopop library, so you can try it out. Then what should you do? Yeah, like when you have made basic UI, you should go learn about basic animations. Like most probably, with like you would not need most of the animation stuff in the what you can say early days, but when you go on to optimize on the user experiences, animations are also some of the things which would be everywhere, almost everywhere. And like what I would suggest you to when you're going to start with animations, go and search about Lottie. Lottie is something which like makes your life easier. Lottie is something which is used almost everywhere on the internet. Like any company you name it, or let's just leave company. Any animation you see on the web, whether it you are seeing on it on the website or on your mobile, there is a very high chance it is made using Lottie files. So like I'll not really dig down into Lottie. So like Lottie, all the animation stuff which you're going to do on mobile, Lottie is a third party thing which would make it very easy. And Material Motion is very like how do I explain it to you? It's some like all the things which you can do using motion layout. Like this is not really correct, but like if you're a beginner, you should not really look at it. And like these value animator and object animator are the things which you would use when you are directly animating some properties or some views in your screen. Like this, these are cool things, and these things are the things which you'd learn, I would say, pretty deep down your journey in Android. Like for the first 6 months or even for the first half a year, like 1.5 year, I did not really get the opportunity to use value animator. Like, I, these are the things which are like it's a very niche thing. Like whenever you have a very specific task and very what you can say very defined task to do, you would need value animator. Otherwise, like these are the things which don't really come very handy. And I also see this toast snack bar. So toast or snack bars are something which you would come across almost every day. And I guess most of you guys have seen a toast, like all these three things: toast, snack bars, and notification. Because, like, how do we explain it? If you have seen, not like the toast is something which pops up on your screen, stays for probably 3 to 5 seconds, and it just goes back. So toast is something like that. Like I don't really have a mobile connected to my system right now. Otherwise, one way or the other, I would have showed you how what toast is. But sorry for that. The toast snack bars and notification, and I had like notification to is am very sure you guys have seen it. So anything which comes up in a notification bar are the notification by your apps. And like right now to show notification, there are a lot of things to do. And as the Lord, you can say Google is working on the Android platform, showing notifications is becoming tougher and tougher. But like that is the job which we have to cater to. So notifications are all the things which you want to show apart from your app. Like anything which you want to show to the user while he's not using your app, you would probably need notification. Because even if your app is not live at the given moment, there are ways which you can like on the using which you can show some information which you want to show to your user. And if you are like avid users of Android app, you would see most of the companies use notification as a way to call for action. Like for example, we are all fan of these Zomato notifications which we get, like maybe 40% off, maybe 30% off. So that are the things which you can achieve using notifications. And I would say we should skip the compose UI part because it's not really needed. I would touch on these things. Yeah. So let's just come back to the example of the social media. Like from like even if you have used WhatsApp, you will see something like, I'm not sure about the time. It happens maybe at 2 a.m. in the morning. It syncs all of the messages with your Google Drive or like any preferences which you have. It would log the UI for the time of the process which is happening. So like something like that, or maybe like the contact syncing feature you want to see if the contacts are updated by the user every 24 hour, or let's just assume every 60 minutes, something like that which you want to do asynchronously and which is timed, like this is going to happen every 60 minutes or every 3 months, every 1 month, like something like that. You can do all of these things using work manager, and like work manager is also really cool. Like these are not really the stuff which you would need to be very proficient with, but these are the stuff which will differentiate you from the crowd. Like if you're going to an interview and if you say to the interviewer that like I have worked with work manager, and if you have a cool project, like some cool projects to show with work manager, most probably you are going to leave a very good impact. And RX Java and RX Kotlin, I would say like RX Java is almost gone. Like I may be wrong in this statement, but kind of like, to be honest, nobody uses RX Java or RX Kotlin anymore. In my personal opinion, I may be wrong, but in my personal opinion, RX Java is gone. You need not learn it. And coroutines or threads are something which are very popular. And like the coroutines and threads are also related to each other like very closely. And if you ask anyone what is coroutine, the layman definition which you're gonna get is that coroutine is a very lightweight thread. Like you can imagine in this in an analogous way that 10,000 coroutines is equivalent to a thread. This is not exactly correct, but you can say. So threads, I guess most of you know about threads. Like how do I explain it? If you have learned operating systems, you know about threads, and if you haven't, you should go Google it. I will touch more upon on the coroutines part. This is basically like mostly because of the asynchronous stuff. And for the example, like social media app is a very good example. So you like let's just uh, like yeah, you are creating a post. For example, you are creating a post which consists of an image, and you are uploading it. So this thing has to be done asynchronous. It's like it's not very likely that while the image is uploading onto the server, you would keep the user stick to like you would stick to like you would ask the user or somewhere restrict the user to stick to that screen. That's not really good. And most of the places, coroutines is something which would be asked very deeply, and coroutines is also pretty cool, I would say. Like you can like most of the things which were done in Java using threads, you can do in a very easy way, or you can say it reduces the pain of Android developers, and all of the asynchronous stuff can be done using coroutine. Yeah,
Sorry for interrupting, Priyam. We have a question
yeah,
from Aditya. Which one is
yeah.
better, Jetpack or XML?
It's not. It's like this is a very hypothetical question. Like Jetpack Compose, I assume. So if you have I would say like there's no straightforward answer. It depends on the situation. Like if you have a very small UI, not very tough to make. If you want to do it in an easy way, at the end of the day, the pain would be less when you're making use of Jetpack Compose, because like you have to write in Kotlin, and the lines of code would be less. So like from the pain perspective point of view, it's easy to write Jetpack Compose files, but there are still some things which would need you to go to XML.
Thank you,
Yep.
Priyam.
Okay, so I just forgot what I was saying. So I guess I was say, touching about the synchronous part of coroutine. So okay, so like I'll just skip upon it now. Like if you upload, like if you want to do anything asynchronously, if you want to maybe run things parallelly, like for example, if you have a very long running calculation, and while running that calculation, you also want to manipulate something on the UI. These two things are gonna happen parallelly. Then most probably you would consume on coroutines. And like if someone is like if I were to like these are the basic things. Like now I'll just skimp upon this thing. Like if you know how to make a calculator, if you know how to make a social media app, and like social media app using a server, and if most probably if you know social media, like how to make a social media app using a server, most probably making a social media app using Firebase won't be like I would say very difficult task for you. Like, do we have Firebase here? No, we do not have Firebase in it. And like one like other things which you would need is that there are yeah, image loading library. Like most of the times, like if I ask any one of you is like how do you load an image from any site, like from Google site, like if you give you a link that this is a link to an image, how do you show it on your app? Like this could be a question asked to you in interview, but this is not really into it. Like most of the people would not ask you, but the answer to it would like you would kind of download that image and then show it on to the screen one way or the other. But that would be very time taking. You would not probably do it 100 times in your app. Like how many times would you write the code to download an image? And like why would you really download an image? There could be other ways to do it, but like this was the most simple and the most intuitive way I said. But in most of the cases, and to be honest, in all of the cases, you would be using an image loading library to show images from the net into your app. And this is something very popular. So you should know about almost all of these four image loading libraries. But the two most common ones would be Glide, and like Glide is the most popular one. Coil is a new image loading library, and full form of Coil is Coroutine's image loading. I'm sorry, I do not exactly remember it, but it is more of like if you have to do image loading asynchronously and if you are consuming a lot of coroutines in your app, most probably you would tilt towards using Coil in your app. Otherwise, Glide is right now dominating the image loading stuff. Like if you have made a calculator, you have made a social media app, you would most probably made would have made some other small apps like how to small like maybe just an app to send a WhatsApp message to someone which you do not have in a contact. Like these are very famous projects. And apart from that, maybe you are using sensors, like you are making an app, like whenever that app is open, whenever you shake your phone, the torch of your phone or the what you can say flashlight of your phone is coming up. These are the sorts of ads which you would have made by now. Like if all of the things which I touched upon, if you are going to follow that, most probably you would be able to make these apps. When you are able to make these apps, a challenge which you would face is now like while making a social media app, which just had an option to post and to see like just to make these files, if you're just to make this app, if you're making this app, most probably you would end up writing, I'm not sure. Like it depends on you in most of the cases, but you would end up writing more than 10 Kotlin files. And if you're writing XML, then maybe 5 to 6 XML files. And if you're not using XML, you are using Jetpack Compose, then like more Kotlin files, maybe 20 Kotlin files. But using Kotlin, like if you're not really what you can say saying doing focusing upon how are you managing your code, like which file is having which code, like which part of your app, if you want to update that app or if you want to scale it, like if when like if you had a very basic social media app, now you want to add a feature of story in your app to like Instagram stories, and now you want to add a feature for chatting to doing these things like scaling your app, adding features to it would become very TDT, like very TD for you, it would become very tough for you. And for that, you would need to learn about architecture. And like these are the very famous stuffs in Android architectures sort of thing, MVVM, MVP, MVVI. But believe me, most of the grilling and most of the real world use cases are right now at MVVM and clean architecture. And like MVVM so is very like I would say the only benefit in terms of performance which you would get is by using view models, and view models is also something like I'll just gonna give you an overview, but view models is something which is highly discussed in the Android developer community. Some people say you can skip on view models, some people say that view model is something which is essential for Android development. Like people have their opinions, but at the end of the day, as a beginner, you would have to learn view models. I'll just tell you, like, if you are making, like, let's come back to the calculator example. In most of the cases, the whatever, like, maybe I, using your calculator, I just added 2 plus 4, and the result which I got 6 would be stored in the activity. Like, most probably, it would be a variable result, and right now it would be storing a value of 6, and like there's just nothing wrong in that. But when I rotate the screen, and this is something that you would observe too, and this is something which you when you are preparing for interviews, this is something which you do as too. So like whenever I'll just tell you, whenever you rotate the screen, the activity life cycle is recalled, like, and all of the views on your screens are recreated from scratch up. So any data which you have in your activity is almost lost. So like when if it right now, if the addition of 2 plus 4 in the screen is showing 6, and if I rotate the mobile from portrait to landscape or vice versa, anything, that would be gone. So like that is something which you ideally would not want in your app to happen. And how do you tackle that? So there could be many steps, but when the most efficient way, and I would say like what most of the developers do is that instead of storing all of the data they need to show, instead of instead of storing it directly into the activity, they store it in view model. So you can assume that view model is sort of an abstraction about the activity life cycle, which is like view model is something which is not really dependent on activity. Like view model can independently live without an activity, even if you do not have an activity running state. Like even if you do not have an activity in a running state, your view model can be in running state. So if instead of having 6 in my activity, if I have 6 in my view model, so whenever the activity is recreated, it can just refetch the data from view model and show it 6. There are other ways to do it. You can also do it in using save state handles, but save state handles is something which most probably would not be used in most of the cases. And what do you say? Like MVVM is the most famous thing. MVP, MVI, MVC is something you should know about. But like, or you can always dig deep to know how was it used, where was it used. If I'm not wrong, MVC was used in Twitter. Like they for a long time, MVC was used in Twitter, and right, like they migrated to MVVM later. I may be wrong, I'm not sure. And clean architecture is something which is picking up the world right now. Like this is a very good way. Like whenever a new engineer joins in a team, if the team is using clean architecture, it like for the new engineer, it would not be quite of a challenge to get familiar with the code base. And clean architecture at the end of the day would use MVVF. Like this is not a very good way of saying that clean architecture uses MVVM. You can say that MVVM plus some things is clean architecture, or you can say is clean architecture is MVVM plus something. But like that doesn't really matter. And like I wanted to touch upon one more thing. I saw it. Where was it? Yeah, local storage. Like this is something also you should know. So at the end of like local storage, anything which you want to anything which you want to be stored, like while using view models, you will just abstracting out any data from the activity or the life cycle of the activity. But if you want anything to be stored in like outside or to be abstracted out from the whole application life cycle, like if I entered 6, I want it to be saved even if I open that app 3 days after, even if I kill that app, even if I reboot my phone, I want that like data to be persistent. Any persistent data if you want to store, like these are the ways which you can do it. Data store is a very new thing, and you can like basically do storing synchronously using data store. But again, like new things are cool, but at the end of the day, the old code bases would not really appreciate it, because like this is, I guess, data store. Yeah, so it's not more than, it would be not more than 2 years like since data store come. It would be probably less than that. So most of the places which you would see, like if you have to store something sort of a key value pair, for example, username and password, that most probably would be stored using shared preferences. And you can also encrypt and decrypt stuff using shared preferences, but like that's not really the point of discussion right now. And anything like most of you guys know about SQL, like relational databases. So if you want to store like anything which is relational, like if you come back to that social media post or thing, if you want to know which user created which post on which day and who all liked it, and like most probably you would be storing this stuff on server, but if you want to have a local copy of it, you would most probably need SQLite and SQLite. But again, coming to it, at the end of the day, anything which you store in a relational form or a tabular form would be it would be stored using SQL. But thanks to the Android developer community, or thanks to Google, you do not really need to write SQLite, because SQLite, again, you have to do too much thing. If you want like very minute control over everything which is happening related to storing your data, you could write SQLite, but in most of the cases you would be using Room, and Room is kind of a wrapper around SQLite, which makes things easier for you. And I guess like these are most of the things which you should learn. And apart from that, if you like, apart from like these are the basic things if you learn, and like if you have made a social media app which can do most of the things, I am pretty sure like you can make almost any app, because at the end of the day, Android world is so big is that you cannot learn and like everything. Like if you, even if you go to an Android engineer at Google who is working on Google Play Store, even he would not know everything about it. I'm sure about that. So at the end of the day, it's like if I know about, well, like let's just assume I talked about 30 topics. If I know about these 30 building blocks, I would be most probable, like it's highly probable that if any other things comes to, it comes in my path, and it's any other agenda I want to achieve, I would most probably be able to figure out on my own. And I also wanted to share, like most probably we are talking, like most of the people in this stream, or most of the people who will be watching this video would be college students. So most probably would be thinking to target internships or job offers. So there was a very good repository by my docs. Sorry for my typing mistake. So like this is a really cool, what you can say, Android interview questions repository. And like if you're able to answer all of the things which are here, like if you're able to remember all of the things, if you know all of the things written here, like you can also like you can even crack SD2, I would say, because like there are too many things. Like what is context? You would like, if I tell you what is context right now, it would be of no use, because you'll just gonna forget it. And also, this is not exactly a technical session. I'm trying to help you around your way to learn, not exactly teaching you technical concept or technical stuff. So these are like, this is a GitHub repository. If you are willing to break into Android development, you should start it, and you should have it, what you can say, bookmark. So this is a very big repository. We almost have each and everything, like anything which an interviewer could ask is here. And like I'll just drop in my personal experience from the interview point of view. If you are looking for internship, like if you are looking for your first internships, if you know about activities, if you have made a calculator, like making a social media app in which you are able to do, like what you can say, upload, and you can upload a post, and if you are able to see all the posts made by other thing, like most probably you would be able to crack. But if I were to name the topics, be good about, like you should know how exactly an Android app is working, what is the life cycle. One of the questions which is almost like, this is a question every interviewer is gonna ask. This is like a ritual in all the Android interview thing, is that they're going to ask you about activity life cycle. So you should know activity life cycle, you should know about activities, you should know about fragments, you should then know about the how to handle on clicks, you should know about intents, how to navigate into your apps. And then some of the things you like, using these things, you also know about basics of routines. Most probably, like in the personal opinion, you would be able to crack not a very good internship, but if it's a first internship, you can do it. Then like these some things which you should not just learn for the sake of learning, in my personal opinion, is that if you know about dependency injection, then like it's very good. Dependency injection is used everywhere, but I would want to wait for you, like if you want to make any app and you are facing a challenge, dependency injection is like, when I learned dependency injection, I was like this is something I wanted to learn. Like this would be, it would have been very better if I had learned this thing maybe 6 months ago, because the dependency injection is something very cool. It makes your life very easier. And apart from that, one thing I want to tell you is that if you like there's no point learning Android development in Java right now, because like to be honest, if you tell your interviewer, if you even if it's not an interview, if you tell someone like I'm making an Android app in Java right now, they're going to judge you because nobody makes Android apps in Java right now. It's just so tough. Like there are so many points for you to develop Android app in Kotlin like that. Like there's no argument. You just cannot argue that this is the reason I am going to make an Android app in Java. Like there could be very few use cases where you should write in Java, but again, we are talking about beginners. We are talking about your first few Android apps, or like we are talking about the person you are just trying to break into SD1 or SD2. Most probably, you would not need it. You would not need to make Android apps in Java. So go for Kotlin. Know the basics of Kotlin. You can try Jetpack Compose, but do not skip on XML. And I would say you would be good in like most of the things. Like you will be good to go crack your first internship. You would be having like a good base, and yeah, upon like when you have a good base, you can almost go and build anything on top of it. At the end of the day, an Android, like the Android community jokes about the thing is that this thing came, like this thing came into the API almost a week ago. I learned it. I was very excited on learning it, and just a month after, like I till it took a month for me to get practice in it, and just a month after it was depreciated. So Android world is quite fast paced. Things come in and things go. But like at the end of the day, if you are good with your concept, if you know what exactly is happening, writing functions or figuring out what API to do would not be big of a challenge. And like we also like one of the motive of this session was also to talk about GSoC. So I'll just switch to the GSoC screen. Just a second. Uh, I'll just share it. Uh, So I guess my screen is visible. Can you just confirm once more?
Yeah, it's visible.
Yep, yep. So like this is the official Google Summer of Code page, and I'll just give you an overview. Most of the people think, like even my college thought that Google Summer of Code is an internship at Google. So I'm sorry to say it's not really an internship at Google. It is more of very like it's you are not even working at Google. It is like what happens in Google Summer of Code. I'll just tell you in a very layman term is that there are many open source organizations, and the whole tech world, the whole tech industry is very grateful to the open source world, because if there was not open like if there were not open source softwares, I can say there would not be such good companies. And Google also acknowledges that. So what Google does is that they call in or all of the open source organizations which want to partner to them, which are looking actively for new contributors to contribute to open source. Google filters out with like the nice open source organizations and tells students to participate in it. So what at the end of the day is you would be contributing to an open source organization, and as a token of appreciation, and Google has a way to giving back to open source. Google would be paying you to work in the open source. So like Google is not paying you, you are not working for Google, but you would be working in for the open source world. You will be working for your organization. You would be gaining a lot of experience, and you would also have that Google tag in your resume. So overall, Google Summer of Code is very like I would say it's a very nice experience. And like where is the timeline? And like there was something how yeah how it works. Like this is something I wanted to show to you. Like there's a very common misunderstanding among the students. Like also I in my first year thought that you have to be a pro to be able to get into Google Summer of Code. I would say that it's not really true. And like these are the simple call to actions. Interested contributors propose to work on a project. Like when you get accepted into GSoC, you would be writing code, and then you submit, and like you have to write a work report sort of thing, and that is something which Google is talking about. Um, I don't think like this is the kind of timeline which you would like even though the long term projects like a standard project for the Google Summer of Code is done now. Like my project for the GSoC 2022 is done. Like I have passed GSoC 2022, but people with extended timelines are still working on it. But if we're talking about GSoC 23, most probably the timeline would look something like that. First, organizations would apply to GSoC, then organizations would be announced, and then like this is the time you should be active, and you could be active before it, but if you want to be active, this is the latest time to be active. Well, I'll just drop in what should you do. Like if you know basics of Android development, I'm keeping it kind of close to Android development, the discussion. So the thing is, you assume you are good at Android development, or even if you're not good at Android development, you want to be good at Android development, you want to contribute to open source, and you want to apply to Google Summer of Code, what you can do is like right now you can go to the page of it. You can go and view organizations in 2022. So there is a thing in GSoC that which are like the organizations which have come in 2023. Most probably more than 90% of the organizations would be repeat organizations. So you can have a look at the organizations, you can have a look at their projects. For example, like if you want to have a look at the Android projects, what you can basically go search. Yeah, there are a lot of Android projects. So like this is a very famous, and like Ankydroid, I can bet on this. Like I can bet $1,000 that Ankydroid is going to come next year in GSoC. So you can go explore their GitHub, explore all their things. You can start contributing right now. They would have like this is the GitHub repository. You can go talk to mentors. You can you can even tell them right now that I'm interested in working with you on Google Summer of Code 2023. You can start with solving what you can say beginner friendly issues. So like you can start searching and sorting. OPI is also very good. Like this is one of the most famous Android organizations. You can start searching and contributing right now. So you should not wait. This is the organization, like this is a new organization. This like I work for this organization. You saw me too. This could also come next year. Like MIT App Inventor is something I could bet upon it would come. So like that is not the point. If you want to get into Google Summer of Code, you should not wait for next year. Like you should go right now, start contributing to open source. Like for example, example you come like you contributed a lot to LibreHealth, and LibreHealth did not come into GSoC 2023. It's not a loss for you. Like you learned a lot about open source. You enhanced your skills, and like let's assume LibreHealth did not come into Google Server of 2023. You can just like let's assume you're applying in GSoC 2023 to processing foundation. You can just go and tell the mentors here like I spent my last year contributing to LibreHealth, and they are going to be so much amazed by you. Like getting into Google Summer of Code, the most like I said, the biggest prerequisite or the most valuable thing are your previous open source contributions. And if your previous open source contributions align, like if they were in the organization in which you want to work with, or in the organization which you want to contribute to, then like that's cherry on the top. But overall, Google Summer of Code is all about open source contribution. So I'll just wrap around what I just said. So it would be you would search organizations, you would filter projects, you would start contributing to it, and I'll just say speak out. All the organizations and all the mentors are really good communicators, and they're really good people. So you're not understanding anything, you're having any problem, just tell them they're nice people. You have a talk with the mentors. And another thing which like these are the things which you would be doing in open source anyway. One thing which is very specific to Google Summer of Code is that whenever the organizations are announced, and when you want to, like for example, I want to work in processing foundation 2023, I would need to write a proposal sort of thing. Most probably they would have an idea list. Like right now though, you can also see the projects active if they have an active project or the finished project. But like right now you're seeing projects, and if we were in 2023 and GSoC would not have started, you would have project ideas, something like that. And you would need to write a proposal, and a proposal is basically your work plan. Like for example, like let's just assume processing foundation wants you to add a single screen about the user. Like most probably this would not come, but let's just assume it wants to have something like that. So you would need to have a chat with the mentors there. You would need to have a chat with the maintainers there, and you would need to prepare a official PDF document and like official document in which you would state like your about yourself, about your experiences, and basically the main motive of the document would be how do you plan to spend your summer to achieve what you want, like what was the project. Like if you want to have a new page in that, how would you do, like how do you propose to do it. um, Making proposals is something which does not only involve you, you should involve your mentors, because if you're making proposals solely based on your intuition, solely based on your thinking, most probably you would be rejected. Because for example, organization OPI is telling like OPI has a project to do end-to-end testing, and they want to do it using, and let's just assume using Mockito, and you are trying to do it using something new which came into the world just a few days ago. Let's just assume it's Maestro. So if you prepare a proposal using Maestro, it just won't work, because like that is a very big organization, and they won't really change your like they don't they don't. I'm sorry for fumbling. They would not really change their, what you can say, project or their tech stack just because you made uh, what you can say, just because you made a proposal. That you can, like, before making a proposal, you can then tell them that like they are open, they are always open for conversations. You can tell them that like this is a good technology, this is a better technology, you can do this. You should, like, one thing and which I've seen my colleagues is that they do not really communicate. In open source, I would say communication is, if you're a good communicator, that is a very big point. Technical skills and communication skills are both very important in the open source world, because at the end of the day, it's a very big project and you are not really a god. So you would need to communicate with your mentors, you would need to communicate with your peers, and communication is something which is going to win you war. So let's just wrapping around. We do not also have much time left. So you choose your organization, you choose your project, you write a proposal, you get in, and you work on your project. And even if you do not get in, like sometimes, even if your proposal was really good, Google can sometimes, like, there are things like slot allocation and many other things which Google has to manage. So there are chances, like, even if you were the best person, you did not get in, so do not get disheartened. Most probably the organization is going to value your contributions, value your time, and God knows you could be appointed as a maintainer, you could be paid to work in the open source. So overall, you should apply to Google Summer of Code. You should contribute to open source. And some of the hacks which I would give you right now is that, like, I also contributed to Opia for about 3 to 4 months, but like one of the, like, most of the people who get into Google Summer of Code to contribute to Opia Android, like Opia also has projects in the web sector and other sector too, like, but most of the people who contribute to Opia on Android are the people who have been contributing to Opia for more than a year. Like, if there is someone who is going getting into GSoC 2023 working for Opia, like right now he would, like, at this given moment he would have been contributing for about 6 months, and that is the reality. Because people who have been contributing to 1 year for a project will be able to write such good proposal. Because if I have been contributing to a project for only 6 months, and somebody is contributing to it for 18 months, or for even 24 months, like that's about 2 years, he obviously knows much more than me, and he would be able to write a very good proposal. So, like, famous organizations like Opia Anti-Droid would have a lot of people contributing to them, and you would have a lot of challenges. Like, you would have a lot of competition to get into GSoC. So my advice would be, like, also Android is, when compared to many other technologies, is sort of easy, because at the end of the day, it is end user, making an end user application is not that challenging. So if you just want the GSoC tag, like, you're not, like, you want that I want to work into Google Summer of Code, I do not really want to work with this organization, or I do not really want to work on this particular technology. Like, my 2 cents would be, either go for a very tough project. I know that there is an organization named FFmpeg on, like, it also comes everywhere, but many of it project ideas, nobody writes a proposal on it. Nobody, like, they get zero proposals on a project. So even if you go, like, even if you do not know much about that project, if you like write a proposal, most probably you would get selected. Like even if you have the guts to write a proposal, you would get selected. Like, but that's another story, that will you, like, would you or would you not be able to pass GSoC? That is something other. Like that is something, like that's a different story. But you would be able to get into GSoC, and if you believe in yourself, you should go for tough projects. So like if you want to get the GSoC tag, go for tough projects or go for new organizations. Because if there is an organization with an easy project nobody knows about, you have advantage. Because if any maintainer has to choose between 20 people, and if he has to choose between two people, you have statistically a better chance to get into GSoC. And I would say the best thing which you can do is, if a new organization comes up and the new organization comes up with a very tough project, go for it. You would have a very high chance to get into GSoC. And I would say like that is all I had to say in this session. If there are any questions, like, I would welcome them. Thank you. I'm done.
Pragya, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, you can go ahead now, I guess, for the vote of thanks.
So, anything more left, sir, for today's session?
Mm, I don't
Uh,
like I'm done
yeah,
with
Priyanka.
all I needed to say. Like I was just saying that I like all of the, what you can say, pointers which I have in mind. I guess I have touched them. I do not have much to say now.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Priyank.
Thank
Thank you, Priyank, for guiding and mentoring our students. I would like to give you a vote of thanks to our speakers for today's session. Thank you for taking out time and energy and making this event a great success. We look forward to collaborate more with you and having more such sessions in future.
you. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
So, sir, can we have the wrap up of this session?
Yeah, sure.
So that's the wrap up of session 3 of Compose Camp by GDSE UCR. Thank you for joining us today. The video of this session will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. The link for social media of GDSE UCR is given on the description. Please feel free to contact us and get your queries done with this. We'll meet you soon with another learning session. Till then, keep learning. Thank you.